In this video, we'll explore what a complete sentence is. We'll look at run-ons and fragments. So first off, what makes a complete sentence? A complete sentence has to have two things. The first is a subject or a noun, a main noun in the sentence. It also needs to have a predicate, which is a verb. So it needs a subject and a predicate, or a main noun and then a verb, what the noun is doing. Here's an example of a complete sentence. Even though this sentence is only 2 words long, it's still a complete sentence. Bobby is the subject. What did Bobby do? He ran. So ran is the predicate. So we have a subject and a predicate, which means this is a complete sentence. What about these? Are these complete sentences? Let's look at the first one. Bobby, the tall boy down the street. Do you think this is a complete sentence? If you said no, you are correct. This is not a complete sentence. We do have a subject, Bobby, but what's Bobby doing? Nothing. We're missing a predicate. What about the next one? Running down the street. Do you think this is a complete sentence? If you said no, you're right. We have a predicate, running down the street, but who's running? We can assume it's Bobby from the sentence above, but what if we didn't have that sentence? We wouldn't know who was running down the street. So this is not a complete sentence either. Please cross off these sentences in your notes because they are not complete sentences. So what do we call an incomplete sentence? Does anybody know? If you said fragment, you are correct. So what is a fragment? A fragment is an incomplete sentence or just a phrase. Which of the following sentences is a fragment? Remember, a fragment is an incomplete sentence, and you have to have a subject and a predicate for it to be a complete sentence. Let's look at A. The dog ran down the street. Does this have a subject and a predicate? B. Did you see the dog run down the street? Does this sentence have a subject and a predicate? And C. The dog down the street. Does this sentence have a subject and a predicate? Circle the answer that is a fragment, the one that does not have a subject and a predicate. Let's check your answers. How many of you think it's A? Raise your hand. How many of you think it's B? How many of you think it's C? If you said C, you are correct. This is a fragment because the dog doesn't have a predicate with it. We don't know what the dog is doing. So if we don't have a predicate, it can't be a complete sentence. Look at the next 5 examples in your notes. Work with a partner to decide if each sentence is a complete sentence or a fragment. Write an S if it's a complete sentence and F if it's a fragment. An incomplete sentence is a fragment, meaning it doesn't have a subject and a predicate. Pause the video now while you complete this activity. Please make sure the video is paused. Start the video again when you're ready to check your answers. So let's check your answers. Number 1, a new store in the mall. Raise your hand if you think this is a complete sentence. Raise your hand if you think this is a fragment. It is a fragment. We have store, which is the subject, but we don't have a predicate. Number 2, raise your hand if you think this is a complete sentence. Simon sings in the shower. Raise your hand if you think it's a fragment. If you said it was a complete sentence, you're right. Simon is our subject, sings is our predicate. Number 3, howling dogs down the street last night. Raise your hand if you think this is a complete sentence. Raise your hand if you think it's a fragment. If you said it's a fragment, you are correct. We have howling dogs. Howling is not our predicate. It's not our verb. It's describing the dog, so it's an adjective. So in the sentence, the dogs aren't actually doing anything. They are howling dogs. They are not actually howling. So it's a fragment. Number 4, who in the world? Raise your hand if you think this is a complete sentence. Raise your hand if you think it's a fragment. If you said it's a fragment, you are correct. Who is our subject? But do we have a predicate? Nope. Number 5, a vote against the proposal. How many of you think it's a complete sentence? How many of you think it's a fragment? It is a fragment. Vote is our subject, but we don't have a predicate. Make sure that you've corrected your answers if you got any of these wrong. So we know what an incomplete sentence is, but what happens if you have a sentence that's combined with lots of other sentences? That's when you have a run-on. So what exactly is a run-on? A run-on is when you have two complete sentences that are put together, and the sentences just keep running on and on and on. So if you've ever had a paper where you have a sentence that's really, really long and it just keeps going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny, you have just made a run-on. Here's an example. A dog down the street chased a cat. They made a lot of noise. Notice we have two complete sentences here. One is a dog down the street chased a cat, and the other is they made a lot of noise. So if we have two sentences together, we have to separate them. They can't stay together. Look at the next 5 examples. Work with a partner to decide what sentences are run-ons. If a sentence is a run-on, put RO, and if the sentence is a complete sentence, write C. Please pause the video while you complete this activity. Please make sure you pause the video. Start the video again when you're ready to check your answers. All right, let's check your answers and see if you can identify run-ons. Number 1, we went to the mall, then we went to the store. How many of you think this is a run-on? How many of you think this is a complete sentence? If you said it's a run-on, you are correct. We have 2 complete sentences here. The first is, we went to the mall. The second is, then we went to the store. And if you listen to the sentence, you can hear a pause. It's the end of a complete thought. So if you have that, it's going to be a run-on. Number 2, she is a great friend and a good neighbor. How many of you think this is a run-on? How many of you think it's a complete sentence? If you said it's a complete sentence, you are correct. She is a great friend and a good neighbor go together. It's a friend and then a neighbor. So it's not a completely new sentence. We just have 2 things that they're talking about. Number 3, he is never nice. He is always mean. How many of you think this is a run-on? How many of you think this is a complete sentence? If you said it is a run-on, you are correct. He is never nice is one sentence, and he is always mean is another sentence. Number 4, before I go to bed, I like to read. How many of you think this is a run-on? How many of you think this is a complete sentence? If you said complete sentence, you are correct. Before I go to bed is a subordinate conjunction, which we're going to talk about later in the video, but it is a complete sentence. Before I go to bed can't say by itself, and neither can I like to read. So we have 2 phrases that go together here. It's not 2 complete sentences. That was a hard one. Let's try number 5. The dog ran down the street. He was fast. How many of you think this is a run-on? How many of you think it's a complete sentence? If you said run-on, you are correct. The dog ran down the street is one sentence. He was fast is another sentence. Make sure that you've fixed any answers that you missed the first time. So how do we fix a run-on? I'm going to give you 3 strategies for fixing run-ons. The first is to join the sentences with a comma and a conjunction. Here are some examples of conjunctions: and, but, or, and so. Here's a run-on example. We looked for the lost dog, we could not find it. Notice we have two complete sentences here, so we have to fix them. So what we're going to do is we're going to join the sentences together with a comma and the conjunction but. We looked for the lost dog, comma, but we could not find it. Fix this run-on. Join the two sentences together with a comma and a conjunction. Here's the sentence. The City Council held a meeting. They meet every month. Fix this sentence with a comma and a conjunction. Here's what you should have done. The City Council held a meeting, comma, and they meet every month. If you had a different conjunction, that's okay, but you should have a comma and a word like and. Here's another way we fix a run-on. You use a period or a semicolon to create two separate sentences. Let's look at the example. We looked for the lost dog, we could not find it. Here's how we fix it with a period. We looked for the lost dog, period, we capitalize the word we, could not find it. Here's how we fix it with a semicolon. We looked for the lost dog, semicolon. You don't need to capitalize after a semicolon. You're still combining the sentences, but you don't capitalize the next word. Fix this run-on by adding a period. Maybe I will run for city council. I think I could do a good job. Here's what you should have done. Maybe I will run for city council, period. I think I could do a good job. Fix this run-on by adding a semicolon. Maybe I will run for city council. I think I could do a good job. Here's what you should have done. Maybe I will run for city council, semicolon. I think I could do a good job. Now normally you wouldn't capitalize I, but because I is always capitalized, you would do it anyways. But if the word was we, you wouldn't capitalize the word we after a semicolon. Here's the third way you can fix a run-on. Add a subordinate conjunction at the beginning and rearrange the sentence. Here's some subordinate conjunctions. When, after, if, since, although, and before. Make sure you write all those words down in your notes. If you need to pause the video, you can do that. Here's a run-on example. We looked for the lost dog, we could not find it. Here's how we fix that run-on with a subordinate conjunction. Although we looked for the lost dog, comma, we could not find it. So notice all we did was add a subordinate conjunction and a comma, because we always have to have a comma when you start a sentence with a subordinate conjunction. Fix this run-on by adding a subordinate conjunction and a comma. I went to the store to buy some milk. They were out of milk. Here's how you could have fixed that sentence. When I went to the store to buy some milk, they were out of milk. Notice I added the subordinate conjunction when, and then I put a comma in the sentence. Now it's fixed. Here's a review of what we learned in this video. A fragment is an incomplete sentence. A run-on is when you have more than one complete sentence combined together, and it keeps going on and on and on. Here are the ways to fix run-ons. You can combine sentences with a comma and a conjunction. You can make a new sentence with a period or a semicolon, or you can add a subordinate conjunction and a comma. This is the end of the video. Please make sure you have completed all your notes.